Hi friends, welcome back to Rafting Magazine, and today we are doing the Virginia Tech helmet study. So I've had a bunch of people asking me about this, and about a year ago I was trying to figure out how I might be able to do this myself, a little backyard science, but it was a little cost prohibitive at the time, so I'm glad Virginia Tech did it so we can talk about it. So I've been wondering, how good is this helmet? How good is that helmet? You know, it's hard to say, but Virginia Tech has some numbers. So let's dive into it and talk about it, because I got a lot of questions about this and some of them don't even have answers yet. So let's check it out. It's really cool what the Virginia Tech study did here, and their star testing methodology. They basically give a star rating based on the amount of force that is transferred into the head through the helmet. So how well the helmet is absorbing impact basically sets the stage for this star rating. And they did it at two speeds. The impact speeds are 3.1 meters per second and 4.9 meters per second, which they refer to in the study as high speed and low speed impacts respectively. Now, the interesting thing about this study, and I think the methodology is critical here, and I've seen a few different breakdowns and people talking about this, but not a lot of diving into the methodology. So I want to talk about what this is all about and how they did this. So you see here I have highlighted the setup allows for linear and rotational motion to be generated during an impact and is representative of the head, neck, and torso of a 50th percentile male. This is really important because the 50th percentile male is kind of a standard in automotive testing for quite a long time. And we're going to talk about this in a little bit, but I can tell you that I am much bigger than a 50th percentile male, so my numbers for this are going to be very different. And, you know, everybody's body is a spectrum. So let's dive into that in a bit and define what a 50th percentile male is later, because I just want to go through the testing and show you what their results are based on this archetype of a certain body type. Here's the fun part. This is what Virginia Tech did with the helmets. So let's take a look at their testing rig. They call it pendulum impactor, and it's basically just a big pendulum that swings a weight into the head at specific speed and velocity. So here's how they did it. They oriented the head from the front of the head, the side of the head, and the back of the head, and measured how much force is being transferred in there and how much, you know, basically like impact you're going to take, and it's kind of related to whiplash, but it's a little different because they're just testing how much impact the helmet absorbs. So I thought these were pretty cool. There's a lot of science data about their methodology and how they collected the data, but there's basically, you know, 20,000 hertz is a lot of data points that they're collecting over the course of a matter of seconds while this is happening. So the equation for the star ratio, y'all can read this on their site, but what this is talking about is the methodology was developed over a college football season, and it was to measure the possible incidence of a concussion that a college football player may experience while wearing a given helmet over the course of one season. So I'm not a college football fan. I had to look this up. But a college football season is essentially like a 4-month period. So that would be equivalent to maybe a season of raft guiding, or, you know, a summer of rafting with a little bit of springtime boating in there. Now, if you boat all year round like I do, I mean, your incidence of impact is going to be higher simply because you're more likely to take an impact because you're just doing it more. And that's kind of what's shown in the star ratings section. So let's hop over to helmets, and we're going to look at some of the helmets and some of the top tier helmets real quick. So here's our list of top helmets, the top 6. Sweet protection is obviously taken the podium with this. So the first 5 out of 6 helmets are all sweet protection helmets. And what's really important in these tiles here is the score that is listed. So for every 0.5 of the score, that's basically a 50% higher chance that concussive force is going to be transferred to your head. And I had questions about this. I'll go into those at the end. But I didn't get the answers to those questions at the time of publishing, so hopefully we can get those later. But The Wanderer here is actually the best helmet, and the Wanderer 2 is close second in terms of actual overall impact protection. And it's interesting to see the shred ready half cut helmet there at a 0.49. So if you see like 0.25, 0.33, 0.36, 0.56, 0.83, these are very small leaps. These are about less than 0.3 leaps, so that would be equivalent to about a 30% increase. You can see here the rocker is going to have a 50% higher chance of transferring concussive force into your head compared to the Wanderer, so that's pretty interesting. But when you jump from the rocker to the shred ready half cut, that's quite a bit higher of a jump than any of the previous 5 helmets. So when you click on each of these helmets, they're going to tell you a little bit more about each helmet and where the star rating is. And I thought this is really cool because it provides a lot of data on what's going on here. So when we look at this, it shows the helmet cost and where it fits this helmet compared to other helmets. So, mid-range cost of this helmet. But when you look at the score rating for low impact, they show an average 5-star helmet, and then they show this helmet. And that's really fascinating because in the data for a high impact energy hit, it's going to be about 4.5 is the average rating, but you're getting just under 2.5 on this helmet. So this is significantly less than your average 5-star helmet, even though the average 5-star helmet's a sweet helmet. So I just thought this was really cool. It kind of breaks it down by helmet, and we'll see why this is really interesting when we get into other helmets later on. So let me show you down the list. I have a WRSI Trident helmet, so let's hop over and take a look at that real quick. So here's a Trident helmet. It's actually 18th on the list. The Sweet Strutter is just a little bit below it, not by much, and the Shred Ready Sesh is a little bit lower than that. But it's interesting to see how the Trident composite helmet is a bit better than the Current and Current Pro. It's interesting how the Current Pro with that little visor provides a little bit more protection, but it's really not a lot. So when we're looking at the scores here, we've got these 3.6, 3.1, 3.2. What this means is that this helmet that I am wearing right now is almost 300% more likely to transmit a concussive force into my head than this little helmet up here next to my head in the video. So that's a really shocking thing for me. And one of the really interesting things I found was that the NRS Chaos helmet is on this list, and that one's an $80 helmet, and it's actually pretty decent for a low-cost helmet, and it's actually better than the current helmets or the Trident helmet. So that kind of made me think a lot, especially the Sweet Strutter here at $200. An $80 helmet's outperforming that, which is fascinating. And the worst helmet on this list got actually 0 stars. It was a Gath helmet, and it's a pretty expensive helmet. It's like $210 for that helmet, but its rating is 4.86. That means it's like 450 times more likely to transmit enough force to create a concussion into your head than the best helmet on this list. So that's pretty shocking to me. I just seeing that, I just want no part of that helmet. But if you look at even the Chaos helmet, the Gath helmet, the worst Gath helmet on the list, it was more likely to give you a concussion at low speed impacts than the $80 NRS Chaos was at high speed impacts. So the Chaos helmet protects better even during high speed impact than a $210 helmet. That is crazy to me. So I don't know. It's just an interesting thing to look at when we're looking at the helmet impacts and what they do to you. I mean, it's made me really reevaluate all the helmets that I use and what people are using out there. And I have some hopes for this, but I wanted to look at a couple different interesting things here that have come up, and one of them is the sizing. So I started thinking, like, okay, they did the methodology with a 50th percentile male head, and I had no idea what that was. So I did a ton of digging to figure out what that looked like, and it took me a long time to figure this out. This is what a 50th percentile male is based off of. These are crash test dummies that are used in traffic collision crashes for the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration. And they come up with the stature that it's called hybrid 3 family stature. Now, you have a baby, 3-year-old child, 6-year-old child, and there's a typo here, but it's supposed to be 50th percentile female, 50th percentile male. So this is really interesting to me because a 50th percentile male is 171 pounds, which is a little less than I weigh. But a 95th percentile male is 73.4 inches, and that is just below my height. I'm like 74 inches. So I'm actually in the 95th percentile male size, and the 50th percentile female is almost 70 pounds less than the male, and the stature is really interesting. 59 inches is 4.9 feet, so that's going to be like 4'11" or so. It's just under 5 feet. So why this is important is because how much difference there is between the 50th percentile male and 50th percentile female. But also the 95th percentile male is it's close to where I'm sitting. I'm a little bit taller and lower weight than that. So that's going to change how I take an impact. But I found this other study that's really cool. So this is from a Swedish study, and all of this stuff is called finite human body models, and this is used the world over for crash tests. It's kind of like the gold standard for crash testing. And one of the things I found that was really interesting is that they say here, gender has been shown to be an important factor for the risk of sustaining whiplash-associated disorders. Concussion would be part of that. The risk for females sustaining symptoms is on average double that of males, and in similar crash conditions even higher. So they want to figure out why this is happening, and they started to measure these sizes because sizes of body. And the reason is there are several systematic morphological differences between female and male cervical spines. For instance, the circumference of the female cervical spine relative to the length of the neck is smaller, as is the vertebral body sizes, and it has a 20 to 32% less muscle strength for size-matched subjects. I think this is really critical when we look at this, because if we hop back over here to a list of the best helmets, in very simplistic terms, what this is saying is if women are going to have double the impact to their bodies, the Sweet Protection Wanderer for a 50th percentile female is probably going to be more like 50%. Now, there are lots of morphological differences, so if we just went with the one measurement that they gave us here of having 20 to 30%, so let's just say 20%, you're looking at just around 0.3 for the Sweet Protection Wanderer in a 50th percentile female compared to a 50th percentile male. Now, obviously, the larger your neck is, the more muscle mass you have, the stronger your vertebrae are, the more you're going to be able to take an impact. However, when we look at another part of the list, though, the lower down list, like the helmet that I'm currently wearing, the WRSI Trident, which I have right here, this one, if we're looking at this one for a female paddler and the 50th percentile female paddler, even at 20%, that's a significantly larger, like that's almost 60% more likely to sustain a concussion with this helmet and you're already 250% more likely. So that takes this helmet compared to this helmet up here. This one is going to be 250 to 300% more likely to give you a concussion, and more so if you are a female paddler. So if you're paddling with female paddlers, I would encourage you to consider what kind of helmets your friends have and what you have. And I paddle with my junior team. They are smaller females, and that concerns me greatly. So currently they are wearing WSI current helmets, and I believe I'm going to change that. So anyway, I do have some more questions though, and so let me dive into those questions that I had for the researchers. I had a lot of questions after looking through this study, and maybe I missed a couple of things, and if I did, please drop those below. But I reached out to some of our researchers to try and see if I could get some answers, and unfortunately I didn't have anything in time for publication. But the questions I had were, when the study mentions concussion risk in the methodology, how is the severity of the concussion quantified? What symptoms of concussion is the impact likely to produce based on the testing methodology to an unprotected head? So if I were to just take a hit to my head, what is that going to look like? Because everything in this study is relative to other stuff in the study. It's I just don't understand where the benchmark is for the amount of concussive force transferring into your head. So I'd like to know that. It'd just be interesting to understand where that's coming from, and how much force that helmets, especially this one right here, which seems to be the best in their testing, how much force is that actually absorbing and preventing from going into your head and injuring you severely? My next question was, did the helmets fit properly, and was any modification done to the helmets to adjust or improve fit, such as adding additional padding that you might find included with the helmet? This, I think, is really important because we're talking about a 50th percentile male head. Now, obviously, a female head is going to be different and of any size. And my head, I'm 95th, maybe 96th percentile male size. My head's going to be totally different. I wear a 5-gallon bucket on my head most of the time because I just generally can't find helmets that are big enough. So how is it, if the helmet is not properly fit to you, how does that impact the amount of concussive force that you're going to take? So I'm very interested in that, and understanding what that looks like. So my next question I had for them were the helmet shells and internals assessed post-impact, and did those impacts show visible signs of damage to the structure of the helmet? If so, how much damage was recorded, if it was recorded at all? So what I'm really interested in is if I take a hammer and hit this helmet, obviously there's going to be damage to it, but how much damage before it's rendered useless? And obviously the scope of the study was not multiple impact testing, it was simply concussive force testing. So I guess this is a question I would have for any manufacturers of helmets that might be watching this video is, how many impacts can a helmet take before you need to retire it? I know in other sports, especially I skied a long time in my life, and anytime I took a hit to my head skiing, I retired that helmet. I know that the speeds and potentially the forces involved in higher impact sports like skiing, biking, motorcycle riding, things like that, and potentially, I'm not sure if climbing is in there, but these really high impact sports, those helmets are only designed for single use. If you hit your head pretty hard, you need to get rid of that helmet because the internal structure is damaged. It's designed to take the impact, break apart, or just take the impact, and it's not designed as a multiple impact helmet. However, in boating, sometimes we take multiple impacts to it because our impacts tend to be low velocity and tend to be low force impacts in general. But anecdotally speaking, I have a lot of friends who have taken concussions, and I've seen a lot of concussions on the river. It's interesting to say that, though, because when we do dig into the data, and as many people know, I'm a big fan of data and having more information. There was a University of Nevada, Reno study from the 90s, so it's a bit dated now. I mean, that's 30 years old, 25, something like that. But the head and neck injuries were only 5.3% of all rafting injuries. In fact, most injuries were to the face, not to the head, and causing concussions. So that's kind of an interesting thing. I mean, maybe we'd all be better off with full face helmets. I know it's unpleasant often to wear a full face helmet, but based on the numbers of the UNR data, then maybe that is something we should be looking at as well. What was really interesting in the study too was that the full face helmets weren't necessarily more protective than the half cut helmets or partial helmets. So that might just be part of the testing methodology, but it certainly bears some scrutiny as well. So there were a lot of questions here, and a lot of things that I feel like I didn't have a whole ton of resolution on. What I do have resolution on, though, is understanding the amount of force that a helmet will take. And, I'm not doing this video to call out any manufacturers, but I would call on manufacturers to say, hey, let's start stepping up the game for helmets, because head injuries are a serious problem. And, at the time of recording this video, recently having an experience where Kaylee had broken her arm, but in the fall and impact, she was wearing this helmet right here and did not get a concussion or any head injury. So I feel like that impact probably should have caused some sort of head injury, but again, I'm kind of getting off into the weeds with that. But I do feel like manufacturers should be looking to step up their game on helmet protection, and I think it's a worthwhile cause, especially as more and more boaters are stepping into Class 4 and Class 5. There's a big argument in the outdoor world with boating, and especially in rafting, is when do you wear your helmet? And this has been going on for a long time. Some people are adamantly just don't want to wear helmets. And some people, like myself, I wear a helmet all the time now. And a lot of people said to me before, rocks aren't any softer. And while that might be true, there are helmets that basically do nothing for you. So, that's something to think about as well, is that, if you're going to wear a helmet, and particularly some of the helmets on this list at the very bottom of the list, and I don't have the answers to the questions, as I mentioned, but I'd like to know, is it even worth wearing the helmet at that point if you're going to have a helmet that isn't doing a lot for you to protect you against damage to your head? So, like I said, there's a lot of questions that are still floating out there. I'm going to try and get the answers for you, try and update you on some of this, but I wanted to go through it, look at the methodology, and understand where we're coming from here, because obviously body size and type has a lot to do with it. Being a high percentile male in terms of body size, I'm going to be taking a lot less damage than a lot of my 50th percentile friends in terms of just sheer muscle mass and bone density that are in the biomechanics of my head that will help prevent injury more than a smaller person. And especially when I paddle with our junior team, and they're very small females. And that is a major concern. If our junior team is twice as likely as a 50th percentile male to take a concussive impact, then that concerns me greatly. I want to make sure that they're outfitted with the best helmets possible. So again, I think that's an important thing to discuss with your boating group, with your friends, with smaller paddlers that you paddle with. So I hope this all helps, and I hope it answers some questions for you. A lot of people have been asking me about this, so thanks so much for keeping on me, but I wanted to make sure I had all the facts straight and I had as much information about the methodologies and testing as I could. So if you have questions about this, please drop those below. If you got comments as well, happy to hear from you, and stay safe boating out there, okay?